Hey everyone, we are live for our Sunday weekly warm-up. We have an amazing guest with us, and of course, we have the one and only Brad Hughes co-hosting the show. My name is Ray Hewert, and we're going to get into tons of fun as we wrap up many in the U.S. celebrating the Thanksgiving 4-day weekend, and then maybe even 5-day weekend, depending on how your schedule was. And then we're headed into an amazing week ahead as we eventually get to the month of December, which for many of us is very bittersweet, but a lot to look forward to. So stick with us. If you are here watching live with us as we stream exclusive in our private Facebook group, please feel free to comment, tell us where you're watching from. This specific segment of our Sunday weekly warm-up only streams on Sunday nights, exclusive in our private group over at teachbettergroup.com. And then if you're catching this later on in the week, we have streamed this as an additional opportunity for you to catch it on Monday nights on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn, where the Teach Better team loves to give you good content. So we will be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back to our Sunday weekly warm-up. Brad Hughes in the house. My name is Ray Hewert, and we have one of my favorite people to interview today. Tom Schimmer is here. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to be here. Great to see you both again, and excited to be here and looking forward to it.
It is going to be so much fun. Brad, how do you feel about Tom joining the show this week?
So excited to be connecting with Tom and a fellow Canadian in the house as well. And we're going to be talking turkey. This weekend is a big weekend for you in the US. And Tom and I have our own opinions, our own experiences as Canadians with an earlier Thanksgiving. So we'll get down into that.
I have to say, guys, before we click the live button, friends, I was prepping Tom and Brad of like, okay, so the show will start off pretty casual. We'll do introductions, talk about Thanksgiving, and then we'll get into like what we like to call the meat and potatoes, our Sunday strategies. We'll have something that our audience is going to take away from this experience. And Tom and Brad both look at each other and go, well, neither of us celebrate Thanksgiving this week. We're Canadian. I was like, man, how did I mess that up? So yes, we might talk about Thanksgiving. For those U.S. educators that are listening, we'd love to have you in the comments telling us how your Thanksgiving was, especially while we do introductions, because apparently I'm the only one on the screen that actually celebrated Thanksgiving these past few days. Tom and Brad celebrated in October, which we are going to talk about. But before all that, Tom, do you mind sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do? And then we'll dig into your Thanksgiving traditions.
Yeah, right. Of course. I love the intro too. So Brad, how do you feel about Tom being on the show tonight? Let's say 5 out of 10. What's he going to say? But I appreciate it. It's great to be here. I am an education author, speaker, consultant. I've been in education for, I think it's 32 years now. I'm losing count. Started in 1991, 20 years in the school system.
Then I can tell you it's 32 years plus a few months.
32 years. Yeah, there you go. I was losing count. But I left my school district position in 2011. I've been for the last number of years as a speaker, consultant, author, and love doing it, and a podcaster as well. So as part of the Teach Better Network. So that's what I do. That's who I am. And I live in Vancouver on the west coast of Canada.
To confirm, I asked Brad how he felt about it because I know that you guys have met in person, and Brad and I love anything with the Tom Schimmer title on it. So I wasn't asking like,
I know. I just thought it was funny. I just thought it was a good time. It's like, Brad, how do you feel about it?
How do you feel about Tom? Are you guys getting along these days?
Well, I won't tell you what I said off air, Ray, but now that we are on air, I am excited, thrilled. Yeah, I'm just beside myself with excitement that Tom Schimmer is on the air with us tonight.
Yeah, we can see you. We can see you reading the script there, Brad. It's all good.
Exactly. The guy in the back with the cue cards.
Right. Where's the applause sign?
Yeah, that's our crack Sunday weekly warm-up production assistant team that Ray and I have at our disposal at our remote locations here.
It's all good. All joking aside, good to be here.
When Brad and I were live together during our daily drop-in, which was every Friday morning, we would joke that there was like a production team behind the camera. We'd like occasionally ask for coffee or the lighting to be changed. It was always a good time. So obviously Brad still has that production team 2 years later and is, making sure he says all the right things.
Yeah, Ray, unfortunately, due to cutbacks, I had to let the production team go. They've moved on to bigger and better things. So I'm just on my own, just plugging away here and just doing what I can to keep the show rolling week after week. I'm not sure about your production team.
Yeah, who refills your coffee then?
I have a Roomba that I've retrofit to refill my coffee. It's only dangerous adjacent. Like it's pretty safe. But there's only been one fire and
it's worked out.
And one there's a second-degree burn involved, but it was all part of the learning process, right?
Oh my goodness, Tom! I'm so sorry you joined the shenanigans, but I promise they are only the beginning of the show. Tom, I would love to get into our Thanksgiving conversation. Before we do, I have to tell you that I am a huge fan. I was talking about you over dinner tonight. We made hamburgers and just had a grand old time watching football. And the way that I described you was essentially like a really famous educator that not only I'm always like very excited and nervous to interview because I admire you so deeply, but also you talk about all the hard stuff in education, like grading, assessment, leadership, all that stuff. And that's also intimidating. So I was like, so it's going to be a really great conversation.
Well, the topics I talk about certainly don't make me the most popular kid at the lunch table. That's for sure. But someone has to do it. And, at some point we've got to confront some of these big ideas and not just gloss around the periphery, but make sure that we're having some serious conversations about education. So yeah, but thank you, Ray. That's very kind of you to say. I'm a big fan of you, Brad, and the whole Teach Better team. I think the work that you all do and the way you inspire people it's really fun to watch. So I certainly appreciate being part of the team.
For those of you
Tom, I was going to say, Tom, on the screen right now is a link to your podcast, and you are sharing your expertise in so many channels, both in print, online, audio. How are you finding that creative process? Do you continue to be excited by what you create as well as by what you receive back from those that are watching, listening, and reading?
I do. Now, if you look closely at the screen, the last episode I produced was October 9th, and I've usually been when I started, I was every week. I moved to every other week. And what's happened this year is I've just had a number of writing projects that have caught up to me. So I'm in the process. I'm going to have a couple more episodes out before the new year. I should get back to a regular every other week schedule starting in January. But it's just one of those things where the work piles up. But it's very rewarding to do the podcast. I certainly love the people I've interviewed. I've interviewed a lot of really sort of interesting and really well-known names in education. You call in some favors, people people have inspired me, and I get a lot out of that because it's a chance for me to test ideas. I ask questions that sort of test some theories. I certainly try to push people's thinking a little bit, and I try to ask interesting questions. So it's a challenge as well as very rewarding to be a part of it for sure.
For those of you that are looking for a new podcast, you can head over to teachbetter.com/podcast to see a whole slew of podcast options that the Teach Better team supports, including Tom Schimmer's podcast. Yeah. I will tell you, Tom, it is hard to keep up on everyone's podcast, right? There's so much different content out there, and depending on the type of educator you are, and even just what you're looking for during that season, you may not be able to keep up with everything, but I very much am a huge listener of the work that you do and very much admire all the people that you bring onto the show and the content that you discuss. So would highly, highly, highly recommend. While we get into more of Tom's advice, maybe some insight he's gotten into on his own or even just grasped from podcast guests, I'd love to ask the two of you, if you didn't celebrate Thanksgiving this week, when in the world do you celebrate?
Well, Canadian Thanksgiving is the second Monday of October, and that's when we celebrate. It's more connected to the harvest, and it really there is some historical research that suggests that Canadian Thanksgiving actually predates American Thanksgiving. So it might be historically accurate to say that you all copied us.
True,
but we'll just leave it at a tie because they really do have a different focus, but. let's not get it twisted here. I still celebrated American Thanksgiving because I am an absolute huge sports fan. I love NFL. I love college football. So I'm happy when there's football on at strange times, or there's 3 games on Thursday, tons of college football all weekend, all the rivalry games, all that stuff. So we celebrate. We might not have days off of work, but I might have taken a couple of days off of work just to celebrate American Thanksgiving anyway. Why not have 2? I mean, why you can have 2 Thanksgivings instead of just 1? That's for sure.
Yeah, I think we all should adopt the Canadian Thanksgiving and the American Thanksgiving and just have 2 opportunities. Do you eat similar foods? I know we ask this every year, Brad. I know I ask you this every year.
I think so. And Tom, feel free to chime in. I mean, traditionally you have turkey or ham, stuffing and all the fixings, potatoes, salads, just the fall vegetables come in, the turnips or squash, like that kind of thing, Ray. It is a great opportunity to get together with family, with friends, and to come together around food is fantastic. But Tom, that combination of food plus sports is really significant. And they even had a Friday afternoon NHL hockey game that we enjoyed. Maple Leafs and the Chicago Blackhawks. Ray, your Blackhawks were playing, and they came out on top in overtime. So food plus sports plus family, a winning combination.
Well, the one thing I was saying earlier is that I love the way that the Thanksgiving is structured in the United States, because having it on the first day of the long weekend, the 4-day weekend, is smart, because ours is on a Monday. And as we were saying, most of the time, most people that I know will have their big dinner on the Sunday anyway, because they don't want to have to go back to work the next day. So I think having it on the first day of the weekend and then having that 4-day weekend, I think is wise. So I'd like to see us adopt that in Canada, but if we can't, we'll just celebrate alongside you toward the end of November.
So much to celebrate. I know that a lot of us enjoy here on the show, especially those that tune in weekly in the comments, enjoy sports. You've mentioned football, you've mentioned hockey. Tom, I feel like you're into a lot of other sports too. Brad and I talk F1 all the time. I think you're into soccer as well, MLS. Do you do English Premier League? Like, how are we getting into all these sports? How do you follow all of them?
I do my best. I mean, I pick a team. I have teams per league. I don't follow it closely, but certainly the NBA, NFL, NHL, and F1, I follow F1. And F1, I'm a fan of F1 simply because of Netflix. That's the only reason. I've been to 2 races in Montreal. I've been to the Canadian Grand Prix twice, which was a great event. I follow soccer. I follow World Soccer. I don't follow it closely, but I have a team per league that I kind of am a fan of, and I just follow it that way. So, I mean, I love all things sports, so I kind of keep up with it as best I can. But, work is busy, times are busy, so I don't follow it like I did when I was 13. But the brain is full and you've got lots going on. When you're 13, your brain's kind of empty, and you can know all the starting lineups of every team in the league and all of that stuff. And I couldn't tell you who played yesterday now. So life gets busy as you get older. That's for sure.
If it helps, Tom, I do know that right as this started, there was overtime happening in the Eagles and Bills game. I can at least tell everyone that. I don't know who won. If someone wants to spoil it in the comments, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Hey, Ray and Tom, our good friend and Teach Better family member, Katie Miglin, is wondering if watching Ted Lasso counts as watching sports. And
I think so.
I can confirm, Katie, that absolutely does count. Plus, it's awfully heartwarming and wholesome viewing. And it's great when you can come together with family to watch a great series like Ted Lasso, or come together for your favorite basketball or football or hockey game. Sure. It's a great connective activity. So Ted Lasso is a fave.
Yeah. And watching the Beckham doc as well. Like, if you're a Spice Girls fan, you're going to get a lot of soccer in that doc. It was fantastic. Of course, maybe you're the same, but I know all that history in terms of following David Beckham's career, but it was interesting to get the insight. So that's another way to get that insight. So it's a good entry for Spice Girls fans.
Can I add, Tom, almost to the opposite? It's also really good if you're not a Spice Girls fan, because I did not like Victoria Beckham very much, and I liked her more after the documentary.
I could see that. I
thought she was outstanding. I was shocked how much I didn't know about her. So really,
hey, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want, and that's to let you guys know that there's a Spice Girls connection to F1. Do you know what that connection is, Ray or Tom?
I do. It's Red Bull. Jerry Halliwell is married to Christian Horner, who's the team principal of Red Bull.
Gosh. The world is so fascinating. Don't you love
Yeah.
these connections?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know why Red Bull is so spicy out there? They've got Jerry Halliwell cheering them on, and
Yeah,
a great season for Red Bull, a record-breaking,
for sure.
unbelievable season.
Yeah.
On a complete side note, Katie Miglin, who's watching, it's also a great sport to kiss a baby that is less than a month old. So say hello to baby Hazel for us, and hopefully you're enjoying the time away on maternity leave, even though you're watching the Sunday weekly warm up. So we're going to transition here into our conversation, because as many of us, we are hoping to continue to get inspired, but also connect with our friends in the comments, and maybe leave with some sort of educational thinking that we'll have throughout the week as we head into amazing time ahead. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back to our Sunday weekly warm up, which is an exclusive live stream brought to you by the Teach Better team that gets to be live with you every single Sunday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, to try and bring you some food for thought as you head into the week ahead. We like to warm you up and get you ready to reach every single student as you head into your Monday morning. We have the incredible Tom Schimmer with us. And while we've been able to joke about Thanksgiving and sports and lots of things in between, Tom is an incredible educator with outstanding resources to support you in so many different topics. Many of us very anxious or nervous to discuss with friends or colleagues. So there's a lot that we have the opportunity to dive into, but I will tell you that there is still so many concepts left. I will tell you even after this episode. So please make sure you connect with Tom. Tom, there's so many different ways that we could take our conversations, from discussing grading and assessment, educational leadership, or anything else that you would be able to give your insight in. If we were to start us off on a conversational note, looking at what you hope our viewers maybe could take away and have food for thought as they head into the week, where do you think you'd like to begin?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of places to begin. I think certainly when I think about assessment, I think of a couple of things. One would be that just a good reminder that we can't teach without assessment. Teaching without assessment is content coverage, information delivery. You always have to know whether or not your students are learning what you're teaching, and whether they're reaching the goals of the lesson. But here's the important thing. Like, we really need to assess our students every single day. Now, I say it that way because a lot of people will think, oh gosh, Tom, if I'm assessing every day, when am I teaching? But the vast majority of our assessment evidence should not be quantified, and it should steer clear of your grade book. This is about using assessment to make instructional decisions. It's about gathering evidence to provide feedback. So the majority of the time, like, you can't teach without assessment. So we assess because we have to. We should only grade when we need to. We look at evidence and all of that. So that's one of the big ideas that I tend to talk about a lot, and my colleagues tend to talk about a lot as well, which is assessment doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be stapled. It's just information that helps us make decisions, because we run the risk of over teaching and under teaching things if we don't know where our students are in their learning.
You know, Brad, even just last week, we were talking about how formative assessment specifically was coming up a lot in the members of our Teach Better family. And we just touched on it. Of course, Tom will be able to discuss it further. Brad, I'd love to hear your vantage point of this. What questions you have as an educational leader, obviously serving a staff of teachers, and the discussion of formative assessments kind of scary to discuss sometimes.
Tom made an incredibly important distinction between simply teaching and teaching using assessment to inform what's going on. And we want to shift away from simple content delivery. We want to make sure that we're being mindful of meeting minute-to-minute needs of our students, as well as our daily, weekly, and monthly goals as well. Tom, when I talk assessment with colleagues, we talk about triangulation of assessment, making sure that we're accessing observations, conversations, and products of learning to develop a greater picture and a more consolidated, rich picture of what students are learning and have yet to learn. In your experience, are there any aspects of that triangulation that may be overlooked or be sort of hard to get to, that really is there kind of a silver lining or like a magic bullet among that triangulation that you really want people to be mindful of and dig into?
I wouldn't say a silver bullet. What I would say is that if you look at the micro on individual standards, it might be hard to triangulate in the sense that you may not have the time to have three different sort of observations, because there may be certain standards that are not conducive to, say, a performance assessment that's observable, something you need to see or hear. So when I think of triangulation, I think more holistically that we want a sampling. A lot of standards are conducive to that. A lot of learning goals are conducive to that. But I would think about zooming out a little bit and not being so fixated on having triangulation on every single standard, but I'd look at triangulation within clusters or strands or domains, so that when you look at a student more holistically, you've had the opportunity to see them do things, you've listened to them, you've observed them, you've got products from them that are tangible. The triangulation, I think, sometimes can get too much into the weeds and trying to always have sort of three different assessments per standard. And I think for me, that's too granular. I'm really, really talking recently about making sure as teachers look at student performance, look at it more holistically. If you think of assessment as just gathering information to draw an inference about the learner, I think that's a really important way to think about assessment, is that here's the totality of the evidence. Here's the preponderance of evidence, if you will. What can I infer about this learner? And that triangulation allows students to demonstrate their learning in ways that account for their strengths, account for, different modes or mediums of assessment, ways that you can demonstrate your learning in different ways, because most standards don't dictate the assessment format. They do dictate the method, whether it's a constructed response, selected response, or a performance task. But inside that, just because something is a constructed response doesn't mean it needs to be written. It can be oral. It can be something you construct in terms of build or demonstrate. So there's lots of different ways to do it. So I would just try not to get too into the weeds with the triangulation. I would try to zoom out a little bit and say, do we have a sampling that really gives us a complete picture of the learner?
Tom, there's so many different discussions that we've had over formative assessment, specifically over the last few months. There's been a lot of educators that have been seeking support in this area. Obviously, we've been doing this type of work for years and have done a lot of different content pieces to support educators. Have you found that there's been a theme this year of what educators are kind of seeking, that you feel like you've been saying frequently, maybe a common phrase or a common workshop or keynote you've been giving where you're saying, yeah, this has always been what I've communicated, but it seems to be a really hot topic right now?
Well, I think a common thing that I'm trying to emphasize recently is that whole notion of not quantifying and not being tangible. I think one of the most underutilized, pound for pound, one of the most underutilized formative assessment strategies is to get kids to talk to each other about their learning. Just posing a question or a prompt and trying to unearth their thinking. So much of what happens in school is private. And if I'm a struggling learner and I'm sitting with a group of 3 other students, I'm in a group of 4. If the teacher gets them talking about how to solve a problem or how to respond to a prompt, if I'm struggling, but I listen to 2 or 3 other students in my group start talking about how to approach the problem, I can't unhear what they've just said. So that's going to help me. That's going to be opportunities for me to learn from my peers. So the teacher strategically just positions themselves around the room, because eventually you know who to go listen to, and you know maybe who you don't need to listen to as frequently. You start to know your class, right? So for me, the idea of getting kids to talk to each other, I think a really important distinction as well is thinking of formative assessment as formative assessment strategies. One clue I've often used in workshops is to try not to use the term in the plural. Because as soon as you say formative assessments, you start thinking about things that are tangible, and they start to feel like summatives that don't count. as opposed to formative assessment strategies. So what are ways in which I can unearth some evidence that can help me make an instructional decision, that can help the students even self-assess and know what's next for themselves as learners? Because that's the ultimate goal, is for students to be able to do this for themselves. So for me, that idea of getting kids to talk to each other is still, I think, one of the most underutilized, but certainly one of the most impactful formative assessment strategies that we can use.
Brad, I feel like Tom is hitting a nerve for me, because this has been so much of what, and again, Tom, we do professional development, so many things. You are somebody I lean on and go to. I learn from you constantly. And I love quoting you in workshops and presentations, like, oh, you got to follow my buddy, Tom Schimmer. He's amazing in his work. And something that I feel like I've become like on recall, like constantly saying, is trying to work with educators to reformat their thinking of the term assessment. Like we have become, or at least the educators I've been talking to and I have empathy for, have become so fixated on what assessment does and does not mean, and really trying to open that up, break that apart, and say, even you just asking a strategic question is a phenomenal formative assessment. It's not only about asking the question, but listening to the feedback you get, and then what is going to be then the feedback that the feedback circle that you reply back, like really looking at the holistic system, not just what am I putting in front of the students, but how does that entire process escalate out so that we can continue to adjust and adapt and be the best educators possible. But gosh, everything you just shared, I feel like that is so common right now. And I find that it's most common, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's because a lot of educators right now feel like they've used all their tools in their toolkit and they're trying to find the next solution. And I almost feel like it's about going backwards and saying, okay, but how did we start? Because that was working really well. Ask those simple questions.
Yeah, for sure. Every, something, when people say to me, like sometimes I get a little bit feisty or whatever, and they'll say to me, Tom, can you give me a list of formative assessment strategies? And I'll say, you're already doing them. And they'll say, well, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, do you ever ask your students questions? And they say, of course, I mean, that's what teachers do. We ask our students questions. But then the question about their question asking is this: are you asking a question so that the same six kids will raise their hand, you'll get one correct answer from them, and then you'll move on, having confirmation that one of the 30 understands the work? Or are you asking the question to elicit evidence of learning? Assessment is actually very simple. It's simple and complex. It's simple because all assessment means is gathering information about student learning. That's it. Don't make a meal out of it, people. Like, that's all assessment is: gathering information about student learning. The complexity is knowing how to target the right things, to have a prompt that's sharp, that elicits the right evidence. So I have to ask the right question to get the evidence that I need in order to make a decision. So that's where the complexity comes in, for sure. But assessment just means gathering information about student learning. And I think once you do that, then you decide what your purpose is. So another thing that I often will emphasize with folks is, every time you assess your students, you should ask yourself a very simple question. And that question is, why? Why do I want this information? In other words, what do I intend to do with it? So it's not about declaring whether something is formative or summative. Just ask yourself, what's the purpose of this assessment? Why am I gathering it? So when people say to me, Tom, what should I do with homework? I say, well, what is the purpose of homework? And they say, well, the purpose of homework is for kids to practice their skills. Well, you just said it out loud. It's practice. Therefore, it's formative. Right? So knowing why you're gathering the information gives you clarity on what you need to do. So if I say, I want this information to make an instructional decision, I want to use the evidence formatively, then I need to ask a more granular question, because I need to be able to I need specificity in formative assessment, right? I need to be able to pinpoint what's next for the individual learner, but also maybe the class as a whole. If I'm thinking the purpose is more summative, I may zoom out a bit and think more generally and look at it more holistically in terms of its quality. So knowing the answer to that question, why do I want this information? Why am I assessing the students? That is a really underutilized but very important question that teachers can help guide the decisions they make. Because once you know why you want the information, you'll know what to do with it once you have it.
So good. Brad, do you ever feel like sometimes, especially during these times of the year, and we all know what these times of the years are, Brad, do you ever feel like sometimes educators just need to take a step back, simplify, and go back to those core values of like sometimes I feel like we just need a reminder to like chill and not make things hard. I'm sorry to say that
Oh,
so
no,
casually.
it's so true, and that happens so often in the cycles of instruction, assessment, and busy times during the school year. Educating seems to be about a list of things that we have to get done and a list of tasks that kids have to get completed and turned in. And Tom, your comment about encouraging student thinking and discussion, making explicit that thinking and crafting classroom communities and environments where that kind of rich discussion is not simply an every once in a while thing, but when a classroom is alive with discussion, it challenges kids' inner thinking and inner soundtrack about what's going on. And in an ideal world, it actually gives kids permission to think and to speak and to articulate their thoughts, especially for some of our most reluctant learners. And if the teacher is perceptive, he or she has a window of 5, 10, 15, whatever it is, minutes into kids' thinking that would not be revealed otherwise.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point, is that every move the students make can help you know whether or not the students are on or off track. I mean, there are things about facial expressions and paralinguistic patterns and body language that can also, so this is what, expert teachers, they notice thinking and they notice where students are in their learning. We would say that novice teachers, my colleagues and I would say novice teachers notice behavior, and expert teachers notice thinking, and that part is, how do I unearth their thinking? How do I try to make as much as possible public, so that there's insights gained across the classroom? We make one of the biggest mistakes is we think we are the sole source of the feedback, of the next steps, of the guidance. Like, we put ourselves in that position, then wonder why it's so exhausting. The whole point of becoming an assessment expert, I would say to people that developing it's the most efficient and effective professional investment any teacher can make, because there is nothing of substance in a school that's not touched by assessment. But the whole goal is for me not to become an expert. The whole goal is to become an expert so I can teach the students how to do this for themselves. I want to bring them inside the process. I want them to be able to self-assess and peer assess and be sources. Of course, the teacher's insight is more expert than the students, but the students have much to tell one another about where they are in their learning. And that distributes not just the power, but it distributes the influence, and it helps create an environment where we're all kind of working together. So for teachers, the payoff really is student investment. Once students understand that, then we can even go further and help them become more self-regulatory about their learning and set goals and uncover how they're learning and understand themselves as learners through the assessment cycle. So keeping ourselves at the center of every assessment experience actually is a block for what is really potentially possible in a classroom.
Tom, we are going to transition here into our Sunday Spark. But before we do, I would really love for you to give our community a very small challenge to strive to complete this week, because something I've really enjoyed about being a fan and a follower, a friend of yours is you always have me thinking. I'm always thinking of so many things I will do based off of even just this 15-minute conversation. And I always leave so inspired. The things that you share to me feels very approachable, which I really value, because I need kind of like the soft push, not the shove. But in case our community is listening, saying, "Oh my gosh, Tom, I don't even know where to start, but I'm such a fan of what you're sharing," where would you kind of encourage them to begin this week?
That's a good question. I mean, what comes to mind, because I was actually writing about it this morning, is reflection, student reflection. My colleague, Natalie Vardabasso, and I are currently in the process of co-authoring a book called Rehumanizing Assessment Through Story. And one of the chapters that I'm writing about is about student reflection and using reflection to tell the story of what you're learning or how you're learning. So one of the things that I was writing about this morning was the idea that this is such a challenging thing, because we feel like we have to go full throttle every week for the entire school year, that we never take the opportunity to press pause and get students to reflect, and not just reflect in a general sense. Because I think the more specific your prompt is, the more you're going to get out of it. So, for example, I don't just say, "Hey, how do you think you did?" I'm going to ask them specifically, at what point during this project were you stuck, and how did you get unstuck, and what did you learn about yourself as a learner, or under what conditions do you find yourself collaborating more effectively as a team? So there are specific things. So I think one of the things that we do is we're forging ahead, and we put ourselves again at the center, saying, I've got to cover all of my standards. And I understand that professional responsibility, but coverage without learning is useless. We don't, if students aren't learning anything, that's not helpful. And one of the ways in which they will learn and deepen their learning is being able to pause and reflect on what have they learned, or how are they learning. And so my challenge would be to find some time, even if it's just at the end of the week, just taking some time to pause and get the students to reflect. And the real challenge would be ask them questions that force them to be a little bit metacognitive, to think about how they learn and who they are as learners, and what happened this week that really helped you learn versus what happened this week that maybe was an inhibitor that you had to overcome, and what are some strategies, things like that. So to me, the reflection part is something that we know is so important, and yet it's the first thing we cut out of our day if we don't have time. And I think the challenge would be to try to make time for that pause and that reflection.
So many good things for us to consider as we head into the week. Let's get into our Sunday Spark. Hey everyone, we are back with our Sunday weekly warm-up, wrapping it up here with our Sunday Spark, which is where we give you something to think about, something positive, a little spark in your day. And of course, we'll go over some wacky holidays. Tom Schimmer has given us so much insight thus far on this conversation, and he will continue as he wraps up here with us by providing us resources and ways to stay connected with him here just in a little bit. Brad, what do you got for us for our Sunday Spark?
I'm going to ask you and Tom, Ray, just to take a look at the screen, and photo is going to come up there. And I wonder if you were the editor here and you captioned that photo, what kind of caption might you come up with?
Tom, I'm going to let you go first, but I think I have a good one.
Yeah,
I'm going.
I almost feel like there's like a little air guitar happening there. So,
yes.
Right.
I was going to go rock and roll. That's what I was going to caption it. Rock and roll.
That's right. Living on a prayer. I don't know. I have no idea.
I like that, Brad. What do you think?
Good one.
Yeah, this is the grand prize winner of the 2023 Comedy Wildlife Photo Awards, and I'll put the link here in our Facebook comments afterwards. But what a great spark for conversation with colleagues or with kids. These photos are absolutely adorable. This is the grand prize winner, just like you said, Tom and Ray, a kangaroo playing air guitar, and this comes from Jason Moore from Australia. Who won up against 5,300 entries from amongst 85 countries. Some other photos here to take a look at is this one here I thought was really captivating.
Brad,
this one here is...
Brad, this is my favorite one. You didn't bring this up. I was bringing this picture up. I love it.
Oh, right on.
This bird looks
this would be a great spark for creative writing, or maybe what happened before or what's happening after. Maybe kids want to adapt this as a jumping off point for a graphic novel or a comic strip. This photo here is called Dispute, and you can almost hear the dialogue amongst these birds. What's going on? And maybe I just need to branch out, but I love anything to do with birds and trees.
I think that's a good one. I feel like the green bird was like a teenager. I think that scene played out this weekend and being told to take out the trash or something like that. Yeah.
To me, it looks like he's being kicked out of a restaurant. Like, get out of here. We can't.
This is not your home.
Now, before we move on, I must ask you to take a look at this this picture here. And Movember is coming to an end, but I wonder if this primate, this monkey, was taking part in Movember or not, Ray and Tom?
So good. I love these photos. I've actually looked at them numerous times, and they're still funny the second or third time watching them. So people, you have to go look up these pictures. They're so adorable.
A great spark to conversation and creativity in your classroom. And not only are this year's award winners featured in this website, but there are links back to the 2022 and 2021 award winners. So great food for thought, whether it's a visual journal or just something to lighten up your staff newsletter, or something to get your community meeting off to a great start in the morning. Hey, while we've got the kangaroo on the screen, I wanted to ask you and Tom, do you guys know why kangaroo moms hate rainy days?
Kangaroo moms hate rainy days.
Yeah, the kids have to play inside.
There you go. I knew it had something to do with the pouch or something.
I'm like, Joey pouch. I got to get the breakfast vest at Joe.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Ray, I think we better hop to it and let everybody know what's coming up in terms of wacky holidays.
Guys, there's some great holidays this week. Noting that today, don't worry, it's not over yet. You can celebrate National Cake Day. Tomorrow, of course, being Cyber Monday. Tuesday being Giving Tuesday for many people. And also, of course, National French Toast Day, which I assume is something that many of you will be celebrating. We are wrapping up the end of Diwali, and we're also getting into National Lemon Cream Pie Day, as well as so many other things for women and celebrating Evan. It's National Evan Day coming up here on Wednesday. So if any of you know a friend named Evan, that might be an opportunity to celebrate them. We have National Computer Security Day, St. Andrew's Day. And of course, as we wrap up our time together, we will head into December on Friday. And Friday will kick us off with so many different days. Like Day Without Art Day. That would be a sad day. Eat a Red Apple Day. Yep. And I don't know. There's like so many. National Cookie Cutter Day. Why wouldn't you want to celebrate National Cookie Cutter Day?
Of course.
So many good things. So feel free to share with us what holidays you are celebrating this week so we can celebrate with you. As many of you are keeping in mind that you have students of all different cultures and backgrounds and religions. And please keep that in mind as we head into December, celebrating all the amazing different people in this world and lots of different religions that will be celebrating very, very special days into the coming weeks ahead. So Tom, thank you so much for joining us. I would love to have you share your contact information so our community here can stay connected to you.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. It's at Tom Schimmer. You certainly can find a lot of information on the podcast, on the Teach Better Network, as well as the Solution Tree website. My books are available there. There's a landing page. Any requests for PD go through there as well. So lots of places to connect for sure.
Wonderful. If any of you are looking for support in connecting with Tom, if you have any issues or can't quite figure out how to get him to your school, reach out to us. We will absolutely be a huge supporter of bringing Tom into your life even further, whether it be just by being a follower and a listener or also somebody that brings him into a school district keynote or workshop. There's incredible things to be learned. So Brad, thank you so much. Of course, every single week being a part of the show with me. I love being able to catch up with you. And Tom, you were an amazing guest. Thank you for kicking off the end of November with a huge smile and food for thought.
Yeah, fantastic. Happy to be here. Looking forward to next time already.
So good. For everyone else, we hope you have an amazing week ahead and keep us in mind if you need anything. Bye, guys.